There's a lot of confusion about the English word believe that we see in our New Testaments, like John 3:16, whoever believes in him. Now the thing is, the word comes from it comes from creditors. What it meant was that let's say you had wealth and you would entrust. The word entrust, that's how it's correctly translated, is entrust. You would entrust your wealth to a creditor to invest it so that you can get interest. That's where the word comes from. Now, in this sense, in the biblical sense, you are going to entrust yourself and your salvation to Jesus. Now, the thing is, it's hard to say you trust in the Lord if you're not going to listen to the Lord. I mean, you trust him with your life, right? You trust him with your salvation and your life. He's your Lord and Master. So you're going to just ignore him? I thought you trusted him, so you're not going to listen to him, right? But what it is we trust in the Lord. And if we're supposed to entrust ourselves to him, and if we trust him, if we love him, then we're going to obey him. And if we don't obey him, then we don't trust him and we don't love him. And according to John, in the first letter of John, we don't know him. We never have. See, the concept of believing or trusting in the Lord in faith is not new. This isn't something that Christians just invented. For example, believing and trusting and having faith is a concept that goes way back to the Old Testament. The thing is, the only difference is the law of Moses was only concerned with teaching the people what sin is and providing a symbolic, education as to the fact that they need to be forgiven, something that they keep having to renew their sacrifices. So it's a learning thing. See, the Torah teaches what sin is, and it teaches about a soon coming salvation. But the thing is, they still understood the concept of faith. You see, when Moses was leading the people in the wilderness, when God gave them manna from heaven, when God told them on the sixth day, gather 2 times more, and do not gather on the 7th day. And the thing is, what did some of the people do? They gathered some on the Sabbath day. Why did they? Now the thing is, they were disobedient to the command. But why did they do that? The reason they did that is because they didn't trust God. They knew what God said, but they didn't believe in him. They didn't really believe him. They didn't trust him, and they didn't love him. So they disobeyed. You see, the disobedience was because they didn't believe in him. They didn't really believe in the God of Moses. They saw power and miracles. They've seen what God did, but they didn't really believe him. Solomon, for example, when he first became king, he was undoubtedly aware of what Torah said. See, in the writings of Moses, there is specific instructions written to kings. Whoever is, because God knew that there would be kings over Israel at some point. So he gave instructions. And there's detailed things about what they can't do. Do not have too many wives. Do not drink alcohol. Do not create a navy fleet. Do not collect an abundance of chariots. So on and so forth. Literally everything that a king was told not to do in the law of Moses, Solomon did. Why? Because he didn't really believe in the Lord. He didn't really trust in him. You see, he disobeyed because he didn't trust in God. He didn't believe in him. He didn't have faith. He was wise, and he knew about God. He believed in God generally, but he didn't really trust him enough to listen to him. That's why he disobeyed. And we see the end result of his life, having multiple wives. It also says, do not marry the daughter of a foreign god. But he didn't really believe, did he? So he ended up being an idol worshiper. Here are some more examples of faith and believing in the Old Testament. Moses, when there were 2 times in which the people were thirsty, and God made water from a rock. The first time, God told Moses to hit the rock, and he did. He hit it with his staff, water came out. The second time, some time later, God told Moses to speak to the rock. Now, the thing is, Moses was very self-conscious about his speech. He kept saying that so many times. I have faltering lips. So he had a lot of self-doubt about his ability to speak. And at the same time, he was told to do something that he didn't do before. See, the first time, he struck the rock. Now, the thing is, he was commanded to speak to the rock, and water would come forth from the rock. Just like it came from the rock the first time. But he had doubt. He didn't just doubt himself. He doubted God, and he didn't obey him. He didn't obey God because he didn't trust God. He didn't trust God because he had a lot of problems with his own ability to speak. He had faltering lips, and that's one thing that he struggled with God about. That's why he even requested us, like Aaron, in the first place. That's why Aaron spoke for Moses most of the time. Now, the thing is, that's an example of him lacking faith in God. Now, he's in heaven, sure. But it shows you that he had weakness too. Now, the thing is, here's an example of faith, or doubting in a way that does make logical sense. Like, for example, I believe it's Gideon. Yeah, Gideon. When the Midianites were tormenting Israel, invading all the time, God told Midian that he called him mighty warrior. God said, I'm going to use you to save the people. Now, the thing is, Midian wasn't sure if it was God. Now, he said, oh, well, if it's you, like the fleece being wet with dew, and the next day he wanted it to, like the grass to be wet and the fleece dry. The reason he did that is not because he was putting God to the test, like breaking the command. He did that because he wasn't sure it was God. All he heard was a voice. And he's like, well, he honestly didn't know, and he wanted to know. But what did he do after he knew, this is definitely God speaking to me? What did he do? He led the people. And he had armies behind him. And then there's the story of the 300 men, how most of them were sent away, except for this small band. What did Gideon do? Like, okay. And he unflinchingly obeyed God because he trusted God, and he knew that God would do what he said he's going to do. And so he listened, and he sent those people away. Just like he listened and he led the people because he knew it was God. Here's a couple of more. Adam and Eve. Classic story. But the thing is, the devil tempted Eve. And he didn't just tempt Eve. No, sure, he tempted Eve with the prospect of being like God and being powerful. But more importantly, she doubted God. So she disobeyed because she didn't believe God. She didn't trust him. And look where that ended up. Now look at Noah. Noah's a counterpoint. Noah knew God. He believed in God. And he was a righteous man in his time. And God told him to build an ark. Well, what did he do? God, I believe in you, but, no. Of course not. I mean, he believes in God. He trusts in God. So is he just going to ignore him? Of course not. He wouldn't be here. He believed in God and he trusted in God. So when God told him to do something, he did it. Now, the thing is, for 120 years he was building this ark. What do you think he was thinking? Like, really? I don't know. I mean, well, I guess if God says to do it, something's going to happen. Well, he is God. He knows. Noah had no idea what was going to happen. But he trusted God. And so he obeyed him. And he and his family were saved because he trusted God. He believed in God. That's why he obeyed God, is because he trusted in God. See, the thing is, you can believe in the various facts of Christianity as true, and it doesn't help you if you're not going to at least try to follow after Christ. It doesn't mean you're going to be condemned if you sin. It means that you're dedicating yourself to following Christ. And if I sin, then I can confess my sin and I'll be forgiven. But I'm not following after sin. I'm following after Christ. I'm dedicating myself to him because I trust him. And I don't know very much about, like, the future. I don't know what's going to happen in my life, but I trust him. And I'm going to have weaknesses. I'm going to make mistakes. But I'm going to trust in him. And this commitment this trust, this dedication to following after him in faith, that's what being a believer means. That's what being a believer means. And anyone else that says anything different, you could just accept this as true and you're saved, then they're a liar. They're a liar. Do not listen to them.